Now, many listening would choose that a talk with a young person about sex just isn't the appropriate thing to do. But I now ask you, what do you feel would be the proper way to solve premarital sex amongst our youth? By simply telling them that the Bible forbids it or that it's just something meant for grown folks? We all know that won't work because as soon as youth are told not to do something, they go ahead and do it anyway. Or do we feel as though the best time to approach the matter is after they've already contracted an STD or STI, or after they became pregnant? Take, for instance, your teenager becomes pregnant. Do you feel that approaching them about what they feel their birthing options are going to be versus information about having sex in the beginning is better conversation? Teens for Life addresses several different approaches that are used to deal with teen pregnancy, including personal purity, the anything goes approach, sex has consequences, and what can be done. In stating this, many parents who do not address sex are actually succumbing to the anything goes approach, which states this approach basically says that teens and adults are animals that are unable to control sexual impulses and behavior. This approach says to do what you want, just try to protect yourself in the process. Sadly, this demeaning approach to personal behavior just dumps fuel onto the teen pregnancy fire and leads to unintended pregnancies, really sick STDs, heartaches, and more. Now, in saying this, I am trying to let parents know that ignoring the issue does not make it go away, but rather covers it until it can no longer be covered up. I just recently read an article in Time magazine that really puts everything into perspective, from statistics to surveys to why having this talk with your children is so vital to their development, as well as choices. Studies show that more than 40% of children have engaged in sexual intercourse before speaking with their parents about it. But what parents would appreciate is the fact that does state that children that have this uncomfortable talk are more likely to wait for the first encounter with sex, and along with that are more likely to practice safe sex, which is something everyone, whether adolescent or adults, should do. What's so sad is that the doctor who was a part of this study had to say, "The results didn't surprise me," says Dr. Mark Schuster, one of the authors of the new study published in Pediatrics and chief of general pediatrics at Children's Hospital in Boston. But there's something about having actual data that serves as a wake-up call to parents who are not talking to their kids about very important issues until later than we think would be best. The pure fact that results such as 40% of children should never not be a surprise to anybody, let alone a physician of such high caliber. And the fact that it isn't very alarming. But then again, parents should realize that the United States holds the highest rate for teenage pregnancy as well as teens with STDs. So if it hasn't hit home for you that this talk should be a priority and not just a sidebar, here's a statistic for you. 50% of those living with HIV are between the ages of 15 and 24 years old. Having sex before one is ready can have a great deal of negative effects on one's psychological well-being, along with their physical health. Many of us aware of the risks of STDs and unwanted pregnancies, but one thing that I was even surprised at was the fact that having sex too early increases the likelihood of young girls developing cervical cancer because of HPV, which occurs in females when they are in the teenage years.